Children's advocacy centers began forming independently of each other around Mississippi back in the 90s. And then in 2001, the executive directors from those children's advocacy centers came together and formed a kind of a loose statewide association. They knew that together they could be a stronger voice for children. They could work together to improve the response. They could help form additional child advocacy centers with the goal of ensuring that every child in Mississippi that needed the support, the hope and healing of a child advocacy center could receive that. Before the children's advocacy centers, the system could feel very fragmented for families and children. Each agency that's involved in the child abuse investigation has a different role or a different purpose. So law enforcement needs to collect evidence, social services wants to make sure that the child is protected, prosecution of course is there to hold the offender accountable. But with that, each agency has a different purpose or information that they may need from the child, and although that they are acting in their individual roles, they are asking the child different types of questions. And so a child may be interviewed multiple times by multiple persons, and that causes additional emotional distress on the child.
I choose to support the CACM because it helps children who really need our help. And talking to Nancy and seeing that we have a program that can help these children, it was really encouraging and I wanted to be a part of it.
I personally support the Children Advocacy Centers because I have personal experience with them. Before I got into the legislature, I was assistant district attorney and I prosecuted child abuse cases and got to see firsthand the value of CACs and what they can bring.
I first became involved with Children's Advocacy Centers about 5 years ago. And if you could see the lives that they touch and see the difference that they make, they are literally shaping the future of tomorrow.
We provide on-site counseling, we provide forensic interviews for children who have been suspected of abuse, advocacy for the children and their non-offending caregivers, information referral, just pretty much anything that they need to help them get through what's been going on.
The CAC provides support to child victims through forensic interviewing, through therapy case management, through court prep and child advocacy, as well as family advocacy.
Each child who's referred to a Children's Advocacy Center is assessed by a forensic interviewer. And a forensic interviewer is a specialist. They're trained in how to talk to children about child abuse, and most importantly, how to question a child in a non-suggestive, non-leading, and developmentally appropriate way.
It's important for the veracity of the proceedings to have interviewers that know how to ask questions, know how not to suggest answers, and seek the truth in that particular case. It's important to both the child and to the alleged perpetrator as well.
We convene as a team for those interviews that the child is only interviewed one time. So it's just the interviewer and the child in a room together. And then on the other side is law enforcement, DHS, the prosecutor, and an advocate from our agency.
Most of your law enforcement officers deal with criminals on the street, and there's a whole different mindset. When you start to talk to a child, it's hard to get away from that adult mindset where it's so much different in interviewing an adult than it is a child. And we just weren't really trained to do that. Like the people at the Advocacy Center now, we send them over there and they know how to talk to them, they know how to make them comfortable. They're not in a law enforcement atmosphere like an interview room or interrogation room.
The philosophy of the Madison Police Department is that we will never sacrifice a child or a victim for a case. And we feel that the best way for children to be interviewed would be at a CAC. There is a very child-friendly environment. It gives everybody involved in the investigation, from law enforcement, social workers, the district attorney's office, even medical personnel that might be involved, an opportunity to come in to one interview, so that the child can just be interviewed one time. Everything that needs to be asked is done in that one particular interview, and the child doesn't have to go over it at every different step of an investigation.
After the forensic interview, the next step is to refer the family for counseling and therapy.
And I find that the children that we have to prosecute their cases, they do a lot better testifying if they do go through that counseling through the child advocacy centers.
Therapy for children who have been sexually abused is really about helping the child process and work through what they've experienced. And so it's about emotional healing and helping them understand what they've experienced, helping them with coping skills. And so imagine a child who gets intervention, who can continue to grow and continue to have a normal life and not feel like the sexual abuse has defined them, and that is all they are, is the child who's been sexually abused. But it's an event that has happened in their lives. They've been able to talk about it, they've been able to process it, they've been able to heal from it, and as a result, they can go on and do all the things that children love to do.
At our center, we have a court school, which is a wooden model, and it's an actual model of a courtroom with a judge and a bailiff and a court reporter and even a jury and audience, including a prosecutor and a defense attorney. And so it gives the child an idea of what a courtroom would actually be like prior to entering the courtroom.
The multidisciplinary teams are the simple concept of case collaboration. This is an opportunity for law enforcement, social services, medical, prosecution, anybody that's involved in the investigation or prosecution of child abuse to come together and staff the cases.
Each agency at the multidisciplinary team, they share their information with the team, and it becomes a team effort to try to help these children and to make sure that they don't fall through the cracks. They're not just a case left out there that the child doesn't receive any help or nothing happens on the case.
If we're about to go to trial, we can discuss with the Child Advocacy Center the counseling that will be necessary, maybe some preparation for trial, and they help those children get ready for trial. DHS can let us know that where the child is with contact information, because sometimes their placement changes, and law enforcement gives us information about the perpetrators, or sometimes those perpetrators have picked up other charges, maybe with other children, and usually they have a better perspective and background information on the perpetrators than we do, because they're out there working every day with these people.
They work together for the benefit of the children, because all of those folks that touch on the needs and health of children are a part of those teams. And if an issue comes up, an abuse issue comes up, or a neglect issue comes up, any of those folks can bring those issues to that multidisciplinary team to seek a resolution, to seek some additional help in determining what needs to be the next step in that particular case.
And so when you have all of these disciplines, putting the child first, we can get the best services in for that child, whether it's therapy, whether it's a medical exam, talking with the school, and so that the school understands maybe what the child experienced and why they're behaving in the way that they are at school. So the team is actually very important, because we essentially we're making sure everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing and being held responsible and accountable for their piece of this big puzzle.
Having a multidisciplinary team approach is absolutely, I think, the heart and soul of why CACs work so well. When you have the wisdom around a table that includes law enforcement and the medical community and mental health and the youth court prosecutor and social services and all of those agencies, it's like looking at looking at a beautiful picture, but you see different, each one comes from a different point of view, and yet they all bring important information to the table. And how can it not be wonderfully helpful when you're trying to make tough decisions about a child who has been traumatized, not to have all of the wisdom you can bring to the table.
The creation of the Children's Advocacy Centers of Mississippi has added additional support for the local child advocacy centers. They are there to provide support and provide services to children in their community in one or more counties around the state. But by having this statewide network, they can all come together and provide a stronger voice for children. In addition, it's more cost effective. So it can be very expensive to bring in or to send a therapist, a forensic interviewer out of state to be trained. By having this statewide alliance, we can then bring that training and technical assistance into Mississippi for the individual child advocacy centers. In addition, it allows for things like peer review for our forensic interviewers, where they can come together and support each other and have that ongoing skill-based learning that they need here in Mississippi. By having a statewide alliance, the Children's Advocacy Centers in Mississippi aren't reinventing the wheel. So if one of them comes up with an innovative way to respond to an issue, say cyberbullying or child trafficking, they can then share those resources with the other children's advocacy centers around the state.
The whole realm of children's advocacy centers has changed since 2010. What we've actually done is standardized procedures across the state. We've put guidelines, we've put stipulations, we have training. It has taken us all to a different level in children's advocacy centers.
There's so many benefits that we've seen being a part of the statewide umbrella, especially in the last few years since we've begun getting state funding. That's one of the biggest things. Being a nonprofit, money can always be tight, and so to always have that as a extra is really nice. Training has been a huge asset to us. To get our staff trained, usually we have to send them off, to another state, or, and that costs a lot of money for tuition and travel. But now through the state chapter, we have lots of trainings that are coming into the state that's very beneficial to not only our staff, but our other MDT members. We have lots of different training opportunities that are provided through the state chapter. One is continuing education for our forensic interviewers, because they get trained and then they're sent out to do these interviews and they need support to come back and get the most recent research. There's trainings on multidisciplinary teams, there's trainings on victim advocacy, just things that our staff and our team members need to know how to handle these cases and to work with the kids. And most of them are at low cost if there is a cost to it, which is, again, very beneficial for us as a nonprofit when our funding is tight.
The CAC is the first step to healing for a child. Children come to CACs and they are empowered to tell his or her own story about what happened. Forensic interviewers employ a child-first doctrine, which means the children's needs always come first, not the collection of evidence, not the family's needs, not the needs of the courts or law enforcement, but the child always comes first, no matter what.
Putting a child's needs first is the reason that we're here. That child is the one that this has happened to, and so we feel like that their needs are put first. We empower them to go from a victim to a survivor.
I think every community needs a children's advocacy center. Not only do they benefit law enforcement and come into a successful completion of a criminal investigation, but they certainly benefit the child.
I think it's important to have the local CACs because it helps to simplify the process. You know the people that you're working with, you're able to get the interview scheduled faster, you're able to have a situation where transportation is not as much of a problem, and you're able to get children seen in a situation where there's no delay Additionally, you don't have the road trip that's involved, and that sometimes causes nervousness with the children or anxiety when they're having to travel to and fro from a trip, when they really are not always aware of what's actually taking place. You run into problems with it being nap time, those kind of problems when you have to transport a child. And those situations are alleviated when you're able to do it locally.
I think it's extremely important that every DA's office uses a CAC to prosecute and to aid in the prosecution of their child abuse cases. And it needs to be similar throughout the state. And what a statewide CAC does is bring that coordination together and provides the training and the resources that can be consistent.
So I have been really excited and privileged to have been a part of seeing this movement grow. It's growing nationally, but it's really exciting to see it grow around the state. We've added 5 new child advocacy centers since 2010, and that just means we're providing more services locally for child victims. It is my hope that every child in Mississippi that has been a victim of child abuse will be able to be seen at a child advocacy center.